Why does it feel like every time a player leaves Colorado Buffaloes football, they suddenly have something to say? Not just a quiet exit, not just moving on, but interviews, comments, subtle shots, sometimes even direct criticism. And now it's starting to pile up. But here, where it gets serious. Because Deion Sanders just stepped in, and he didn't hold back. Behind closed doors, he delivered a message that was loud, clear, and impossible to ignore. No talking about former teams, no throwing shots at old coaches, no dragging the program after you leave. He even compared it to talking about your exes and made it clear that's not how professionals move. And when you hear the tone behind it, you can tell this wasn't random. This has been building. Because it's not just one player, it's becoming a pattern. Names like Jordan Seaton and others have sparked conversations that are now spreading fast across social media. Every comment gets clipped, every quote gets debated, and suddenly it feels like the spotlight isn't on the field anymore, it's on what's being said off it. And that's where things start to get complicated. Some people believe these players are just speaking their truth, that maybe things weren't perfect behind the scenes, and they have every right to share their experience. But others, they're not buying that. There's a growing wave of fans saying this looks more like clout chasing, that once players leave a high-profile program, especially one led by someone like Deion Sanders, they stay relevant by keeping their name tied to the spotlight. And in today's game, that spotlight is everything. Because one comment can turn into a headline, one headline can turn into a narrative, and once that narrative starts spreading, it's hard to stop. So now the real question isn't just about what these players are saying. It's about why they're saying it, and whether Coach Prime is trying to shut down a problem, or stop something that's already gotten out of control. But here, where everything really shifted, because Deion Sanders didn't just sit back and ignore the noise. He addressed it directly. And the message he delivered to his team wasn't soft, wasn't vague, and definitely wasn't open to interpretation. It was clear, when you leave this program, you move with respect. No talking about your former coaches, no taking subtle shots at the program, no interviews where you try to tear down what you were once a part of. And the way he explained it, that's what made it hit even harder. He compared it to talking about your ex. Why would you go backwards when you're supposed to be focused on what's next? That analogy might sound simple, but the meaning behind it was deeper than that. Because this wasn't just about one player or one comment. This was about a pattern that had clearly been building behind the scenes. Multiple players leaving and then speaking publicly, comments stacking up, narratives starting to form. And Coach Prime saw exactly where that was heading. Because in today's game, one comment doesn't stay small. It spreads vast. A single quote can turn into 10 headlines. 10 headlines turn into debates. And before you know it, the focus shifts away from football and straight into controversy. And that's exactly what he's trying to stop. Now, to be fair, some people might look at this and say it's just about professionalism, that once you leave a program, you handle your business quietly and move forward. That's the standard in a lot of places. But others are questioning it. There's been some discussion online about whether this kind of message is too strict, whether players should have the freedom to speak on their experiences, even if those experiences weren't perfect. And that's where the tension starts to build. Because on one side, you have structure, discipline, and protecting the program's image. On the other side, you have player expression and personal truth. And right now, those two things are colliding. But one thing is undeniable. Deion Sanders isn't trying to play both sides. He's drawing a line players speaking out. It's becoming a pattern. And that's what caught everyone's attention. When Jordan Seaton made his comments after leaving Colorado Buffaloes football, it didn't feel like an isolated moment. It felt like part of a growing trend, players exiting the program and then immediately going public with their experiences. Some of those comments weren't outright disrespectful, but the tone, the timing, the comparisons, that's what made it hit differently. Talking about how things are better somewhere else, mentioning coaching differences, hinting that the environment has improved since leaving. Even when it's subtle, people pick up on it. And once one player says something, others start speaking too. Now suddenly, it's not just one voice, it's multiple. And that's when things start to spiral. Because every new comment adds another layer to the story. Every interview becomes a new headline. And before long, it creates the impression that something bigger is going on behind the scenes. Now, to be fair, there's another side to this. Some people believe these players are simply sharing their truth, that not every experience is perfect, that when players leave, they should be allowed to talk about what they went through, good or bad. And that's a valid point, but others see it very differently. There's a growing conversation suggesting that timing plays a big role here, that when players leave a high-profile program, especially one led by Deion Sanders, there's a spotlight attached to anything they say. And that spotlight brings attention. A lot of it. So some fans are starting to question the intent, not saying every comment is wrong, but asking whether some of these statements are amplified because they keep the player relevant after leaving. And that's where things get complicated. Because now, it's not just about what's being said. It's about why it's being said. And once that question enters the conversation, everything gets viewed differently. Every comment gets analyzed. Every word gets picked apart. And suddenly, what might have been a simple observation turns into a much bigger narrative. And that narrative, it's growing fast. Which is exactly why this situation is no longer just about individual players speaking out. It's about how quickly those voices can reshape the entire perception of a program. But here, where the conversation really splits, because now it's not just about what's being said, it's about why it's being said. And that's where things get complicated. On one side, there are people who genuinely believe these former players are just telling their truth, that their experiences inside Colorado Buffaloes football weren't perfect, and once they leave, they have every right to speak on it. Football programs aren't flawless, not every player fits, not every situation works out. So from that perspective, speaking out isn't disrespect, it's honesty. But then there's the other side, and this side is getting louder. There's been a growing wave of fans suggesting that some of these comments feel a little too well-timed, that once players leave a high-profile program, especially one led by Deion Sanders, they know exactly what kind of attention their words are going to bring. Because let's be real, anything connected to Coach Prime is going to trend. Every quote gets clipped, every comment gets reposted, every small statement turns into a debate, and in today's game, attention equals relevance. So naturally, people start asking questions. Are these players speaking out because they need to be heard? Or because they know it keeps their name in the conversation? Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean everything being said is false. That's not what people are arguing. The real debate is about intent. Because sometimes, both things can be true at once. A player might genuinely feel a certain way, while also understanding that sharing it publicly brings attention. And that's what makes this situation so tricky. Because once you go public, it's no longer just your personal experience. It becomes part of a bigger narrative. A narrative that can shape how recruits view the program, how fans react, how the media frames the entire situation moving forward. And once that narrative takes off, it's almost impossible to control. That's exactly what Deion Sanders is trying to get ahead of. Because from his perspective, if every player that leaves starts telling their story publicly, whether it's fair or not, it can quickly turn into a cycle. One comment leads to another leads to speculation, and suddenly the focus shifts away from football and into constant drama. And that's the real risk here. Because this isn't just about truth or clout anymore. It's about who controls the story once it's out there. But here's the part that adds another layer to this entire situation. And honestly, it's something a lot of people are overlooking. Some of what these former players are saying. It's not completely wrong. And that's what makes this even more complicated. Because if you look at what's been happening inside the Colorado Buffaloes football, there have been real changes, major ones, coaching staff adjustments, position coach switches, even shifts in leadership roles behind the scenes. That doesn't happen for no reason. Programs don't just reshuffle like that unless something needed to be fixed, improved, or restructured. And because of that, when players leave and say things like, the coaching is better here, or the system fits me more, it hits differently. Because now, it sounds believable. Now it feels like there might be some truth behind those statements. But here, where the situation flips. Because while those comments might have some validity, the way they're being presented is what's causing the real issue. It's one thing to move on and say a new situation fits you better. That happens all the time in college football. Not every system works for every player. But it's another thing when multiple players leave and say similar things publicly, especially in a way that starts building a narrative. And that narrative, it starts to sound like something was wrong across the board. Now, to be fair, that might not be the intention. Some players could simply be speaking from their own experience. Maybe the new program genuinely fits them better. Maybe the coaching style aligns more with how they learn or play. That's normal. But when those comments stack up, one after another, it stops feeling individual and starts feeling collective. And that's where Deion Sanders steps in. Because from his perspective, even if parts of those statements are true, the bigger issue is how it reflects on the program as a whole. Once it goes public, it's no longer just about one player's journey. It becomes a story about the entire team. And stories spread fast, especially when there's already attention on the program. So now what might have started as simple comments about fit and development are turning into something much bigger, fuel for critics, questions for recruits, and headlines that don't go away easily. And that's the real problem here. Because this isn't just about whether the coaching changed. It's about how those changes are being used to shape the narrative around the program. But here's the bigger issue that nobody can ignore. Because this situation isn't just about Colorado Buffaloes football. This is about what college football has become. Welcome to the transfer portal era. Because now players don't just leave quietly anymore. They don't just move on and let their play do the talking. They leave and instantly have a platform, interviews, social media, podcasts, clips that spread in seconds. And once they speak, it doesn't stay small. It explodes. That's the new reality. A player can transfer on Monday, and by Tuesday, their comments are trending. By Wednesday, those comments are being debated across the entire college football world. And by the end of the week, it feels like a full-blown narrative has already been created. That's how fast things move now. And that changes everything inside a locker room. Because think about it, if players know that once they leave, they can go public with their experience, it shifts how situations are handled internally. It adds pressure, it creates second-guessing, and it can slowly start to affect trust. Not always in a big way, but in small ways that build over time. And that's dangerous. Because a strong program isn't just built on talent, it's built on culture, trust between players, trust between coaches, and understanding that what happens inside stays inside. But in this era, that line is fading. Now, to be fair, there's another side to this. Players today have more power than ever. They have voices, audiences, and opportunities to share their stories. And for some, that's important. It gives them control over their own narrative instead of letting others define it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But it comes with consequences. Because once every situation becomes public, it's harder to separate real issues from noise. One comment might be valid, another might be emotional, another might be exaggerated, but online, they all get treated the same. And that's where things spiral, which is exactly what Deion Sanders is trying to get ahead of. Because if every exit turns into a headline, then every locker room becomes vulnerable to turning into a story. And once that happens, it's not just about football anymore. It's about controlling chaos before it takes over. But now we get to the part where this situation really turns into a debate, because this isn't just about comments anymore. It's about control. And more importantly, it's about where you draw the line between culture and player freedom. On one side, you have Deion Sanders building something very specific at Colorado Buffaloes football. A structure, a standard, a way players are expected to move, not just on the field, but off it too. Respect the program, handle things internally, don't go public with issues once you leave. That's the culture he's trying to enforce. And from a leadership standpoint, it makes sense. Because strong programs are built on accountability, on trust, on knowing that what happens inside the locker room stays there. Once that trust is broken, things can unravel quickly. So from that perspective, Coach Prime isn't trying to silence anyone. He's trying to protect the foundation of what he's building. But then there's the other side. And this side is just as real. Because players today aren't the same as they were years ago. They have platforms, they have voices, and they're no longer willing to stay quiet about their experiences, good or bad. So when they leave a program, some feel like they have every right to speak on what they went through. And that creates tension, because now it feels like two different mindsets are colliding. One says, move with professionalism, keep it internal. The other says, tell your story, speak your truth. And neither side is completely wrong. That's what makes this so complicated. Because if you lean too far into control, it can start to feel restrictive, like players aren't allowed to express themselves. But if you lean too far into freedom, it can create chaos, where every situation turns into a public discussion. And that balance, it's hard to maintain. There's even been speculation from fans that this situation is testing how much authority a coach can really have in today's game. Because the more power players gain, the harder it becomes to control narratives once they leave. And once those narratives are out, you can't take them back. So now, Deion Sanders is making a choice. He's choosing structure over noise, discipline over public debate. But the real question is, will players buy into that standard? Or will this new era of player freedom continue to push back against it? Because whichever side wins, that's what's going to shape the future of not just this program, but college football as a whole. But here, where this situation really starts to have long-term consequences, and it's something most people aren't paying enough attention to. The locker room is watching. Every single player inside the Colorado Buffaloes football is seeing how this plays out in real time. They're hearing the comments from former teammates. They're seeing the reactions online. And most importantly, they're watching how Deion Sanders responds to all of it. And that matters more than anything. Because moments like this shape how players feel about the program. If they see strong leadership, clear standards, and consistency, it can actually bring the team closer together. It builds trust. It reinforces the idea that there's structure in place. But if things start to feel messy, if it looks like outside voices are controlling the narrative, that's when doubt can creep in. And doubt spreads fast in a locker room. Now add recruits into the mix, because they're watching too. Every high school player thinking about committing, every transfer considering their next move, they're all paying attention to what's happening here. Not just the wins and losses, but the environment, the culture, the way situations are handled when things don't go perfectly. And this kind of situation, it makes people think. Not necessarily in a negative way, but it raises questions. What happens if things don't work out for me? How does this program handle players on the way out? Is this a place where I can grow, or a place where things could get complicated fast? Those questions matter in today's game, because perception can influence decisions just as much as reality. And right now, the perception around Colorado Buffaloes football is being shaped in real time, not just by what happens on the field, but by everything happening around it. That's the risk, because one strong narrative, fair or not, can stick longer than any single game result. It can affect recruiting, it can affect team chemistry, it can even impact how players approach their own future within the program. And that's exactly why Deion Sanders is stepping in the way he is. He's not just responding to comments, he's trying to control the direction this is heading before it grows into something bigger. Because if the locker room stays solid and recruits still believe in the vision, then none of this noise really matters. But if those two things start to shift, that's when a situation like this can turn from background drama into something that actually affects the future of the program. So after all the comments, the debates, the interviews, and the growing tension around Colorado Buffaloes football, everything really comes down to one simple thing: results. Because no matter how loud the outside noise gets, no matter how many former players speak out, no matter how many narratives start forming, none of it sticks if the team is winning. That's the reality. And Deion Sanders knows that better than anyone. All the messages he's sending right now, the focus on respect, discipline, and how players carry themselves, it's all leading to this moment. Because setting a standard is one thing, but backing it up is something completely different. And now, the spotlight is locked in. Every game is going to feel bigger, every performance is going to be analyzed harder, and every result is going to shape how this entire situation is remembered moving forward. Because if Colorado comes out and starts winning, everything flips. All the criticism, it fades. All the comments from former players, they lose weight. All the questions about culture, they disappear almost overnight. That's how fast narratives change in this game. But on the flip side, if they struggle, then everything we've been talking about gets louder. Every comment gets brought back up, every critique gains more traction, and suddenly, what felt like outside noise starts looking like something deeper. And that's the pressure. Because now it's not just about playing football, it's about proving that the culture being built is real, that the structure holds up under pressure, that the message Coach Prime delivered wasn't just talk. It was foundation. And let's not forget, players like Deion Sanders are right in the middle of this. Every throw, every decision, every moment on the field is going to be viewed through this lens. Fair or not, that's the reality of being in this spotlight. So now, the question isn't about what former players are saying anymore. It's about what this team is about to show. Because in the end, talk doesn't decide